And there's a big generation people who don't critical thinkers are managers, right?
Right.
So where are people who know how to manage people?
I mean, I see what you're saying too, because okay, so my generation, if you're my generation, now beginning to age out.
Right.
Okay. Not only were you a manager, one of the reasons you probably were a manager, you saw the whole thing happen. You saw the advent of the PC, the implementation of the PC, the proliferation of the PC, and what we have now is all of them married together. And that's game changing.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Down to Business podcast. Hope you're doing great today. If you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're doing that at, we appreciate you so much for listening. Or we're now on TikTok, and TikTok is a world of its own. But Dad, you know what TikTok is? Mm-hmm. How do you describe it?
Something teenagers play with.
We'll take it. We'll take it. So everybody, this is my father, Ben Kirby. And so Dad, thanks for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
We're going to be talking about something interesting you did, and that is owned a business for 36 years.
Right.
And you recently had it acquired.
Right.
And so we're just going to chat. You have beautiful insight for how to do business well, employee issues, employee good things. It's not always issues, hopefully. In today's job market.
There are plenty of good things.
In today's job market, it's kind of even harder. But yeah, I don't know if there's anyone better to hear information from than you. So kind of start, Dad. Tell us a little bit, okay?
Would you like to hear about the formation?
I want to hear 1984.
Okay.
June 4th. How did that
was the
come
first
to your
day.
brain?
June 4th, 1984 was the first day for Imports Plus.
Which was what? What kind of business did you start?
Automotive service.
Car repair, automotive service, right?
Yeah, at the time, Imports Plus, the reason we chose that name was that really indicated what I wanted to work on. I was really only wanting to work on imports and Volkswagens, but I could foresee a time where they want that to be the only thing.
Right, so that's where the plus came.
So the plus came there.
You started fixing cars or messing with them at 12 years old? How old?
14. I was doing bikes at 12 probably, but I mean, I was always tinkering with something. And but in earnest, when I turned 14, our next door neighbor was moving and had a Volkswagen junked in the yard, gave it to me, and I started working on that. By the time I was 15 and able to drive, I had that car running.
And isn't the truth that you read a book and that like helped you learn how to fix it?
Yeah, there's a wonderful Volkswagen book by John Muir, and it's step by step, and it helped us do it. Now, Volkswagen is not the hardest cars in the world to work on either.
You would have been the best at YouTube. Like if you were 15 and you had YouTube, you would have learned everything.
We didn't have that stuff.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
And so we went in business. What I did was I worked for a service station back when they were full service. Mm-hmm. I was a mechanic and a tow truck driver from about 1977 until 1984.
Okay.
And then the end of the full service station was clearly coming.
Just to remind people, we have a lot of young listeners. Full service station, which is a mouthful, by the way.
Yeah. They pumped your gas.
They pumped your gas. They wipe your windshield. They
check the air in the tires. Check the oil. Exactly. Man, so I wish
we had that still.
You used to get that every time you went and filled up.
Yeah.
You didn't even have to fill up, and so I did that those 7 years. At the same time, I went to Midlands Tech and took some engineering courses. I thought I might want to be an engineer, but I realized quickly behind the desk was not for me. Mm-hmm. And so in 1984, about early January or something, I got serious about looking for a place to have a garage of my own.
What made you decide not to work for somebody else and want to do it yourself? Because that's like the entrepreneur question.
It was an opportunity. So believe it or not, Irmo wasn't all that hot.
Irmo's a city we live in.
It's a tiny little town, railroad town. Didn't have car repair facility particularly. Certainly nothing for the import group. Now, there were some downtown, and so
saw the opportunity.
I saw an opportunity.
Got it.
And then I saw a location with that closed. There was a closed convenience store down the road. Mm-hmm. Had a pretty nice piece of property, and so made all that happen by buying and selling cars in 82, 3.
You save some money by flipping cars, basically?
Flipping Volkswagen.
Okay.
And got enough money to put the down payment down and get a lease. And then my father loaned me $10,000, and that bought a building, believe it or not, back in those days, a 3-bay building with electricity.
Sucker would cost $125,000, $150K today.
And so we did that, and then threw the shingle out and opened up. And the beauty of it was
it just you?
Me and a helper.
You and a helper.
The beauty of it was I had been above board with my former boss that owned that service station. And again, the era of full service station was coming to an end. And so the first job I ever got, he sent me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the first repair job
I didn't know that.
Was sent to me by my previous boss.
Wow.
And then it just grew from there. They had a big towing business. And so if they thought I could handle it, and it was towed in, they might tow it into me. And so we had business right away. It wasn't hard to get business. The other thing is I picked that specialty niche at a perfect time. The Japanese imports had been around since the early 70s. They were about 12 or 14 years old. They weren't so foreign anymore. Mm-hmm. People were,
getting used to them.
They were getting used to them, and it looked like particularly Toyota and Nissan, they were taking hold. They were going to stay. And so those were excellent opportunities for me.
Struck while the iron was hot a little bit.
I did.
Yeah.
We did not move straight into the harder to work on German cars like Mercedes and Audi and BMW. For a long time, we kept it simple. VWs, Japanese cars, and any light American that I thought I could do.
So how long did you started your business? It was steady pretty early.
And then I met your mother.
And then you met Mom. And then
I met your mother.
What changed there?
In 86.
Okay, 2 years later.
And at that time, I had an office person. It was my roommate. He was clearly not a car guy. He could run an office. He was better at running a retail store. And so when your mom and I realized we were serious and I had proposed to her, she came to work for us.
Okay. And
she put in the first real office, filing cabinets, methods for doing everything, repeat,
procedures and processes.
Exactly. Yeah. That a mechanic that's running a business doesn't do anything.
You got papers everywhere and
papers
grease.
Everywhere, exactly. And so she was very good, and she's also very good with people, as you know.
As I know. She's so good with people.
So we put that together, and the year she came on, our business doubled.
Wow.
Then we got married in 87, and it doubled the next year, and it doubled the next year, and then it went along like that for a while. Then you were born in 92. Mm-hmm. Now, she took some time off after that. Mm-hmm. But by that time, your grandmother worked for us, and we had more people. So,
were you still in the first original building?
No, I was able to build.
Talk about the transition.
Okay,
and what made you business-wise decide to move from your original location to where you were for the last 30 years?
Okay, so the rented location, the one I started in,
how'd you know it was time to move on? I mean, that's because like a lot of people listening, right? That's the hardest thing is like, when do I leave? When do I invest?
I know exactly when they do that. So I was leasing from a company.
Okay.
All right. That used to own a convenience store business. Mm-hmm. They had gotten a property down the street and built a much larger convenience store. Okay. So they had in my lease, there was this much money, XYZ, could not be anything but a garage. Could not be a convenience store. Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but they were subleasing it. Okay? So there's a local owner, Mr. Derrick. All right? So about year 3, Mr. Derrick comes around and says, I finally found my lease on this thing, and this thing can't be anything but a convenience store. It's in my lease. I said, well, that's exactly opposite of my lease, Mr. Derrick. He said, well, no harm. He said, we just got to get this thing broken and talk to you personally. So he did. He did some legal work. He got the lease with that company broken, and that was just to get his property back. And then he made me an offer. Now, it was more money, okay? But I absorbed that because it wasn't time to move yet. But then by the time I started looking at the improvements to that property, I also had it appraised. So in case I wanted to buy that because he offered that. And I had it appraised. And then by the time I looked at the appraised value, the improvement the likelihood of the road being widened and losing some property, I decided to look elsewhere.
Cost analysis made you decide.
I did.
Yeah.
And so I looked around. And
for people listening that don't know, the place you ended up moving down was a mile away.
9/10. Yeah,
9/10
of a mile. Yeah.
I can't believe you know that. 9/10. And then number two, it ended up being, you noticed at the time, I mean, the property value is insane. Now Irmo's much more grown up, and it's.
But I could have done that at either property.
I know, but it's a highly desired area. You could have moved to a bad place, is what I'm saying.
I could have.
You didn't know,
but either of the two places I had shot up.
Yeah, they are.
And so cost analysis was the thing. So Mr. Derrick came to me and said the rent's going to have to be ABC, about twice what I was paying. Well, no harm. I mean, that's nothing against him.
Yeah.
And so we started looking at what it would take. I got shot down 2 or 3 times because this area was still very rural, and I had to have commercial zoning. And so I got shot down on Part A, I got shot down on Part B, but then another business who had 2 acres bought and only using 1 called me. And they said, would you consider buying this acre? It was pretty low, swampy, but we looked at it. My father was in the building business, and so we looked at it. We decided we could use it, so we did buy that. And I bought 1 acre. I built a 5,000 square foot building, and it took everything we had. I mean, everything.
Every dime you had.
Every penny, and then credit card money.
And you had, I was born, right?
Nope.
I was before
This is 89.
So okay, let's talk about that for 1 second. How'd that feel? I mean, going all in on it.
It wasn't scary because it was just me and your mom. At least to me, it wasn't scary.
How is it not scary? What if you didn't work? What was the idea?
Well,
like,
we had
as an
a piece of
entrepreneur,
property. I mean, we had a piece of property in a building.
Yeah, but how are you going to eat if it didn't work? You said you went all in on it.
Well,
you remember your mindset when y'all were talking about it? Like, there had to be a conversation one night. You and mom were like, "Hey, if this doesn't work." Or did you just never have that mindset?
Because we had plenty of business.
You just never had that mindset? No, you just knew it was going to work?
We had plenty of business, and customers were asking us to get bigger.
Yeah, you had the confidence.
Yeah.
And you had the proof of sales.
I had 5-year track record. This is 5 years after the initialization. And that's another thing I was going to mention is you startups, you're going to have to do a time where you lease or makeshift your place, and you got to makeshift your building, makeshift your equipment. And you're going to have to do that 4 or 5 years before a bank sits down and talks to you based on what you're earning then.
Right.
Bank's not going to talk to a self-employed person 6 months in.
Right.
They just, I mean.
And it's not smart to spend X amount on equipment when it's a depreciating asset at an early venture in your business. You need to do things that make
unless it's like some of these people are going to be buying franchises, okay?
Okay.
Now, the people that do that, they're going to be provided with equipment and provided with education, and then they're going to be extracted a payment. That's a little bit different from what I'm talking about. Okay. I didn't have to pay anybody. But we mentioned the money that my father loaned me. The one piece of equipment we bought was a brake lathe, which in the time was very needed. And so we had enough basis. And then the trick is to stay in your lane.
Okay.
Don't go outside of your lane. In other words.
In terms of your service offerings?
Service offerings,
Be super laser focused?
And very smart. You have to be laser focused and really good at what you're doing. Okay. And then.
Do you see that as a thing? A lot of people, don't mean to interrupt you, Dad, but do you see that as a thing? You've been around. I mean, so to give a little context, you're pretty well known in our community now.
I've lived in the community 51 years.
Right. And you know a lot of business owners. Is the ones you see that have floundered, this is a kind of a warning to our listeners, are they the ones that every opportunity is a good idea? And like you said, they're not laser focused. They're not. Like everything is a great idea, and then they get off track, and next thing you know, they crash. Is that what you see a lot?
Actually, the ones that crash are the ones that just don't go to work. They open a business, they hire a few people, and they don't go to work.
And they think it's just going to be a money maker for them.
Money maker, and there are very few things that can be done. If that was that easy, everybody do it.
Especially in service and trades, right?
Especially in service and trade.
Right.
But. Yeah, I'm always made sure to go to work. It was over 3 years before I had one vacation.
Jeez, not healthy, by the way.
And it was my honeymoon.
You went on a honeymoon late, or wait?
No, I went in '87.
Oh, I see.
Opened in '84. Took the first vacation / honeymoon in '87. Wow. And so, anyway, in '89, that opportunity with that other property presented itself. And so we took it and built a building and opened in October of '89 at our new location. And by that time, we had 2 or 3 employees, other than your mother and I.
Okay. You remember your first? Who's your?
Now, Mom helped design that building a lot.
I know. So, who was your first employee? Not the helper. You remember who it was?
John Wiggins.
There you go. Isn't that cool? You remember his name? Mm-hmm. You never forget that. Anyway, so you move into this new building, right?
Yep.
How did it transform your business? How'd that property? How did the
It had a lot going for it. The makeshift buildings we had built at the previous location were not high, tall, couldn't accept automotive lifts. Oh. So we were jacking up cars and working underneath them.
Gosh, on like rollouts, huh?
Yeah, but we were young, 20-something.
I remember those. They don't really make, like, no one really uses those anymore.
No, almost not.
Like, these rollouts were like I'm looking at Chris. Do you remember rollouts, Chris? Yeah, they were like almost like
skateboards.
Skateboards. Yeah, like bed skateboards.
Like human-sized skateboards. Yeah. And
sliding on their cars. It was crazy.
Yeah, jack the car up, put it on stand.
I remember seeing those in your shop when I was a little kid.
And so, so the thing that the new shop provided was great headroom. It also provided something. Your mom designed a lot of features in it where one person could cover the office and at the same time work with the mechanics handing out work.
One thing you're saying is that if you're going to put resources into a new facility, for people listening, you need to think strategically. I mean, this seems obvious, but I don't feel like some people think about it like strategically as much. You were thinking about how to design it effectively as possible to expand your business and not just meet your current needs. Is that what you're saying?
I don't remember what year it was. '89, no computers.
Right.
Or the very earliest.
On paper. Yeah.
The very earliest of computers, PCs. We didn't get them to '93. Okay.
People are listening right now who are like 22 years old. We're talking a different language after that.
We wrote everything by hand.
Yeah.
And all your bookkeeping was by hand except the accounting office. They were on computer.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing.
And so we designed, though, a computer nook for taking in customers. Turned out to work great. Okay. So we opened, and then not long after we opened, down at that location, we scored a really good young mechanic named Randy Nussler.
Remember him?
Randy worked there 15 years. And eventually took a teaching job. Now he's a trainer for Audi America. He works out in the Pacific Northwest.
Pretty cool.
And trains Audi mechanics.
It's got to feel good to be a part of his journey.
Right. And all the time, you hire a new person, you find something they're strong at. He was strong at Subarus. So we started working on a lot more Subarus. Okay.
Okay, wait, let's not blow past that. That's a great point. You just said, tell me if I didn't hear this right. You find the person, they're really good, and you start doing what they're good at.
Right. So in my opinion.
That's what you just said, right?
In my opinion, in a service trade particularly. Okay. You can't hate the work because you'll never be good at it. Okay. So you find something that you love, and then you're good at it. And work doesn't seem too much like work.
That's right.
Obviously, as you get older, your body starts aching and stuff, and it starts seeming like work. But if you can find a service trade that you're good at, so I hired this young man from the Subaru dealer and brought him in. He was good at Subaru, and that Subaru dealer also had to have a Nissan side, so he was pretty good at Nissans. And
so you start pushing for those.
22 or something.
Yeah,
maybe.
You start pushing for those customers, then, right?
Then you start looking for those customers.
Makes
right
so much sense.
Because your regular customer walks in and says, "Oh wow, thanks, that's good. Do you fix other kind of cars?" We do. So then you just rock along. You're growing your business. Do you
remember your first big challenge, Dad? So let's get into maybe some specific stories and questions. Do you remember? So everything's going good because, just to give people a little bit of an understanding, you end up selling your business. Has it been 3 years or 2 now?
2 years.
2 years ago for 7 figures, right?
Yep.
And amazing. But obviously the road to that is super bumpy and challenges.
It's extremely
What was
bumpy.
the first big one? What was the one where you were like, I know I've had this. I'm not going to say I'm not going to make it through this, but you're like, man, is this worth it, or this is going to hurt us really bad? You remember that first story?
Employee theft. We had a girl in the office before your mother. Mm-hmm. So 85. Okay. We had a girl in the office, and she was in charge of doing, deposits, whatnot, and she was stealing. Here's the beauty and a little trick for you guys. If you can go with a small bank, do it.
It's great advice.
A small bank.
It's great advice.
A small bank can call you and can see you one-on-one and see you at the window, and they know you. And, for instance, my banker called me and said, I think you better check your checkbook. That's all she could say. Mm-hmm. But I think you need to check your checkbook. We have some deposits missing or something. She was just trying to be vague. She couldn't blame anybody. Yeah. But I started looking, and it turned out that person had stolen what was a large sum of money at the time, $1,500.
Which would be about $10,000.
Today, probably.
Yeah.
It was an entire engine replacement.
Right.
She stole that, and
she get arrested?
Yeah.
Jail?
Yeah, I think so. And so, because it wasn't the first time.
Right. Okay.
It turned out to be a pattern.
I see.
And so that was a huge thing. She had fallen in with the wrong crowd, and she was in a problem.
Okay, so you got past that.
Past that.
So what about in your new building when you have like a vivacious company?
My biggest challenges were before I got to the new building. I had most of them ironed out by then.
Interesting.
So then we had some theft. Can't do anything about that. Vandalism, So, you work with your customer to make sure they're happy that your insurance company's provided. That's another thing, people, is whatever kind of insurance you can afford, get it. And don't do business without some kind. Now, in my business, we had two kinds available, direct primary and legal liability. Legal liability, you have to be proven legally liable, then your insurance would pay. Mm-hmm. Personally, I think that's a terrible way to do business. That puts your customer in a pickle because if they've got insurance, it's going to go first and yours is going to be second, and the customer's going to have a deductible and all this kind of stuff. So I always kept direct primary. If we had any kind of insurance claim, bam, mine went to work for you.
Yeah.
And then so vandalism was the first one, and we made sure everybody got taken care of that. I had a small fire, an automotive fire, and had time to put it outside. We had it inside the shop and had enough time. We couldn't get it to go out, but we were able to push the car out in the middle of the parking lot. Again, things that save a lot of money, that saved a lot of money. Save the building from burning down, save other cars from burning down. But your insurance goes to work, pays the bill. And so those were two of the biggest challenges. And on moving day, this is crazy. I sent a guy 9/10 of a mile, remember?
Yeah.
Okay? Go up there and get the blankety-blank car, not the green one, because the carburetor's sitting on the floor, but bring me down, so we're moving cars. Well, he gets in the green one. Carburetor's on the floor. He cranks it up. Gasoline somehow shoots in the manifold. Car goes wide open, turns it off, backfires, catch on fire. All the fire extinguishers removed.
Oh, God.
Already. And so I'm sitting down here at the new shop thinking, where's this car?
And you didn't have cell phones.
And fire trucks start going that way.
You don't have cell phones?
No, we ain't got a cell phone.
You call them. Hey, boss.
So fire trucks start going that way. So your brother-in-law, Billy, your Uncle Billy. Your Uncle Billy, I said, Uncle Billy, right up there and see what the heck Guy's doing. That was his name, Guy. Okay? Well, Guy's standing next to a burning car with his hand in his head because he cranked up the wrong car.
Did you fire him?
Yeah. And so that was a challenge. Again, the insurance company has to go to work for you. The trick is to keep good insurance, really, because you're going to have events. We probably didn't have 10 events in 35 years, but you're going to have events.
Can we get to the big one that happened?
What's that one?
Where the gentleman fell?
Oh, yeah.
Is that okay?
It's okay. Later.
This is the one that you handled as good as possible, but it's the worst tragedy of all time.
It's terrible. I had a young apprentice.
It's about 7-8 years ago now, or 10?
7 years ago, maybe. I had a young apprentice, came to me out of the auto mechanics class at the local school with his parents' blessings, worked his way past graduation, got a job at Michelin as a maintenance engineer, and worked for me part-time. He was an air-cooled Volkswagen fan, Beetles.
Like you.
Like me. And so anyway, he was not yet an employee. He was just a really good friend. We would give him odd jobs.
He was like an intern.
We 1099'd him. Yeah. So he would do a job and get paid, and that would be that. And then one day we had a shop work day. We were going to put all new lights in the shop, all new lights in the sign, clean the gutters, and we rented one of those man lifts. And it was supervised by, our friend Don.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Don was a handyman we used all the time, and he's a very nice guy. Well, Andy and Don did all the lighting and did the sign lights, and they were in the process of cleaning the gutters. And I still don't know to this day exactly what happened, but Andy got out of the bucket and got on the roof and had walked. I heard him walk across one time and come back and speak to Don about, yes, the gutters on the other side are dirty. Then the next thing I knew, he's falling through a skylight. And he was killed.
And he passed away.
It killed him.
Yeah. Well, the story is that they were supposed to stay on the skylift through the right side, and for some reason, Andy got out of it.
Get off, and I reckon it was his youth.
Yeah.
But I still don't know whether he had a medical something happen up there or a trip and fall.
Yeah.
But it was very bad. It came down, and of course, I go running to him.
Just super traumatic experience.
It was very traumatic. A lot of feelings. I'm praying over him. I'm trying to get. I've got his pulse in my hand, on his leg, and unfortunately, I feel that go away, and it's just a bad situation.
So I only bring that up to ask. It's like literally the worst case scenario,
right?
How did you mentally? Because I don't think I asked you this at the time, really, because I was only 22 and first job and everything. How did you get through that? Because all the guys that are working for you see this happen. Almost everybody still works there.
Yes, saw it
so you have to go back to business as usual.
Well, I go to and first of all, I prayed about it a lot, and I knew I had prayed over him. I prayed over him for God to take him, if that was His will. That don't leave him incapacitated. And so that, and then I had a couple of days. It was Thanksgiving weekend. It was like Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And so I had a couple of days to just kind of gather around family and gauge the response and gauge the parents' response. And I'm going to be honest with you now. His parents were golden. They appreciated what we were doing because we were training him.
You're pouring into
him. And by the same token, they knew his personality was he was going to be on that roof that day. And so, because if he could come help do something, he was going to do it.
Right.
He left a girlfriend behind that was very much involved. Also, she was going to be a mechanic. Actually, she's an engineer, computer engineer now.
So what, I'm just saying, like, as a business owner, how did you go back to business as usual when because this was a tragedy, this was an accident, this was nothing that you could have done.
Yeah, I could not have personally stopped this.
You couldn't have stopped it.
Except from saying nobody goes on the roof, which I did from then on.
Right, which, I mean, But
you got somebody working that knows what they're doing.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So how did you overcome that? Was it just your family,
told the employees,
your friends? Was it a group effort? I mean, because you really responded to that better than I think a lot of people would.
I told the employees that, Andy was gone, and we were sorry about that, and that that they would never be put in that position. In other words, guys, he got up there of his own accord and wanted to help.
How did you personally?
How did you personally? I'm not personally over it, but
still bothers you.
It bothers me. I wish I had him. No, I wish he were still here.
Yeah, of course.
Because the older I get, the more I could really use a good air-cooled Volkswagen mechanic, and he was a good one.
Yeah.
I also miss the fact that he and his girlfriend, they had plans for everything. Wedding, children, school together, everything. My pastor came by and spoke with me. Your mother would always tell me, you know, honey, there's nothing you could have done.
Yeah, right.
And I would be like, boy, I wish I'd have been up there myself. And, you know, I just wasn't. And so I have to believe that there was God says he knows when your day is. And I believe that to be the case. Right. So eventually that was the way I coped with it. It took a while.
Yeah. I just appreciate that.
I've always been proud of his accomplishments. We still mention him in our little Volkswagen group. I mean, he was a good kid.
He was really good. So I just asked that because there's probably dozens of people listening to this, Dad, and I'm not sure how much you've even listened to the show before. I know you have, but there was a guy this morning in a group I'm in, and he literally said, "Hey guys, it's been fun. I had to close my business today because of gas prices." And he has 4 kids. He's married, and so he was pretty upset about that. Yep. And so there's a lot of people listening right now. There's a lot of people listening to the show that are going through something extremely trying. I mean, we're about to hit a recession. There is no question we're going to hit a recession.
I don't think there's any question about
that. With inflation plus recession, I don't think it'll be an 2008 recession. I believe it'll be where it hit a dip to hopefully take a slow roll back, right? But it's going to be a challenging 12 to 24 months.
It's funny, too.
How do we...
the car business...
Yeah.
The repair business is better in a recession.
Right, because people want to fix what's broken instead of buying new stuff.
What's broken, they can't afford new.
Right.
And they understand. All of a sudden, your mechanic becomes a more valuable asset.
Makes sense.
Okay. And so in a recession, that's what happens. And then in good times, it's very easy to switch hard repair work to simple service. That's easy. Okay. And so... if you've got somebody who's having to close because of gas prices, let's just say all of your revenue comes from delivery. Okay, I can see that. All right? I mean, we're experiencing something in a multiple like 2.5.
I mean, tow trucks, right?
Tow trucks. So they're adding fuel surcharges.
We just added one.
I would suggest that. I don't think it's time. There's also other inflation, okay? But... under certain circumstances, I just don't go for a price increase the moment I see inflation. But when gasoline on a company that's heavy gasoline dependent like yours,
like Trifecta,
okay, a surcharge is easy to put on and take off.
Right. That's what. Yes.
And I like it because it shows the customer where you're increasing your cost.
Right. Instead of like a flat rate increase. Right.
Exactly. In other words, we're going to have a rate increase of 3%.
That's good advice.
Okay. Well, no, maybe they don't understand that. Maybe they think you just want 3 more percent. Okay. But if it's down there's a fuel surcharge on the bottom, they understand. Well, you know me too. I mean, I went to the gas pump and it was $100, and so they can understand that.
That's a great point.
And so
I hope everybody heard that. That is such good business advice.
We used to have many vendors that did that because we've been through a spike like this before. It was a shorter spike.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, you've been like, I have 2 more things to talk about. One was the cyclicalness of you've been through the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, and then the great technology increase. What has it been like to learn through 4 decades of business, like the ebbs and flows of what it takes to be successful? Like, what was your keys to success? Like, that's what I was going to ask. I'm going to ask you about them.
Always fix the car.
No, not about car, about business, about business.
So believe it or not, often business takes care of itself if you always fix the car.
So meaning your point to that statement is do the right thing. Do what you say you're going to do.
If you're a landscaper, be good at it.
Right.
Have a job you can be proud of when you leave.
I love that.
If you are a vendor, your display might need to look nicer than everybody else's. Do what you do well. If you're a pool builder, probably that comes with a maintenance program. Be good at it. Don't be a slouch. And then a lot of business fixes itself. You get a lot of advertising from that. You get a lot of word of mouth. And the business problems don't really rear their head.
That's good. What was your keys to success? Do you have like a couple? What did you feel like you did great that if other businesses implemented it, they would have a really good result?
That's funny. Answering the phone is one of them.
That's a great answer.
Answering the phone all the time in 2 rings. If you heard it ring 3 times, even a mechanic was supposed to stop and pick up the phone.
Wow.
Okay?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is a great piece of
advice.
advice.
Answer the doggone phone.
Man, so good.
Answering machines are not the way to do business, in my opinion.
So good.
Now, some of these new high-tech ones that simply redirect you to where you want to go, maybe, okay? But we had 4 lines and 3 people answer them, and by God, it needed to be answered.
I love it.
And
so let me give you the fancy reason why that's important. It's called, like, you're if you don't answer, you're losing customer acquisition. So customer acquisition is like one of the highest things that people pay for. Google, Indeed, like not Indeed, ads, billboards. You're paying for ways to try to gain customers.
Right.
So when they are calling you for them to be fish on the hook, right, and you're just like letting the fish off every time, that's a great point because that's where you don't know what.
The other thing is realize I was in a service business, and service businesses need to service the customer.
So man, you're on a roll right now.
And so answering the phone is very important.
I love that. What else?
The other thing is that stay in your lane thing. So you may know, because you were around, but you may know that by the end of our career, 2020, we were servicing both U.S. cars, German cars, Japanese cars. You didn't get there overnight. So we had to stay in our lane, both tooling and experience-wise, until that got better.
Later, you also didn't do like some things you said we don't do,
right?
Which even would have been
because
profitable.
I believe that's a specialty area,
which is smart. I mean,
like transmissions. You mentioned transmissions. Mm-hmm. Transmissions to me is a specialty mechanical area and art, all of itself.
And you referred it to people, right?
We would refer it, or the later in life it got, the more that product was available, already rebuilt in a crate somewhere. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so technology is filling the backlog in a way. But right now, one of the most challenging things for any service business, welder, automotive, plumber, electrician, is, in my opinion, we missed a complete generation of critical thinkers. So those people have to be critical thinkers. Okay? They have to think and be able to perform a repair after thinking about it critically.
You think that happened because of cell phones and computers just like dumbing you down?
Not dumbing you down. They stole an entire generation of employees to go into the IT business. They were talking. So like when I graduated high school, 79, already a little bit of talk, but the next 3 to 5 years was very critical. The PC was introduced, and it was the latest, greatest, and a whole generation got taken.
Wow.
And
I never thought about the IT wave was the reason that there was that gap.
Well, they got promised a lot.
Because you look at it right now, right? Your age people, you're hitting retirement age. You're 61 now, right?
Yep.
So 62 is when most people retire, 62, 65.
62 to 5.
Yeah. Right, okay. And we were just talking about this yesterday, I believe Chris and I in the car, is all these people who are, I think we were talking about managers, right, Chris? There's a management lapse as well because all the people who've been managers are retiring, and there's a big in a generation of people who don't critical thinkers are managers, right?
Right.
So where are people who know how to manage people?
I mean, I see what you're saying too because, okay, so my generation, if you're my generation and now beginning to age out,
right?
Okay, not only were you a manager, one of the reasons you probably were a manager, you saw the whole thing happen. You saw the advent of the PC, the implementation of the PC, the proliferation of the PC, and what we have now is all of them are married together, okay? And so you have that, and that's game-changing.
I'm just thinking about your friend.
And so like an IT person that breaks in today never saw Windows 93.
Right. I'm thinking about your friend down at Express Oil Change, Mr.
Billy?
Yes. Okay, he's a good example. What was his first career he told us?
He was a glass business
right
before he met his wife.
But he recently went over there and he's now the manager at Express. But I'm just saying, like, there's not those guys like laying around. Right. He's done a really good job transforming that business because we get all our oil changes done at Express, and he takes super good care of us. Like, we get 6 or 7 trucks oil changes done in 2 hours.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
They have a good
customer
system.
Service is great, system's great. But what I'm saying is he was telling me that it wasn't his career. Like he's like he just moved to this lately or whatever.
Well, he owned a service station.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he owned Firesgate BP, and then BP said no longer.
So, he transitioned not industries, but
he stayed in the same industry, automotive industry.
Right.
But he's transitioned from an owner of a service station
to an
operator and a manager of a tire store originally, and now this full service.
Just an impressive guy. He's not been there very long, but there's not a lot of guys like that. So that's stay in your lane. That's great. So let me
stay in your lane. Let me tell you one more thing about staying in your lane.
One more time.
Is equipment. Okay, you have to budget equipment when it's as heavy as that business is. When automotive business is heavy on equipment, okay? All the things that lift the cars, all the things put on tires, all the things that balance the tires, alignment machine, diagnostic equipment.
When you say budget equipment, you mean like scope out what you're going to need and be
in other words,
very strategic about what you're going to need?
A lot of equipment manufacturers sell things in groups, okay? So to be great at Japanese cars doesn't require the same electronic equipment to be great at German cars. Okay? So you can't just go buy Tool A. You got a plan. Now, I'm going to work on way more of these Japanese cars. I'm going to buy the Japanese one. And then when you finally get it amortized, and you've paid for it, and it's still working for you, you look to see if you can't buy the German one.
Makes sense.
But
always be thinking
that's
forward.
That's the stay in your lane part.
Forward thinking.
In other words, don't just go, I can fix your Mercedes, have no clue what you're doing. That is not going to work.
You had to have thought out what you're going to say yes to.
Yes,
makes sense.
Exactly right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the last question, Dad. This has been amazing conversation. Employees. Easily the hardest thing right now besides inflation. Employees, we know that COVID created a labor force shortage and no one knows where they are, and they went, apparently to Mars is what everyone thinks, right? I mean, but you had pretty much the same staff the last 15 or 20 years, basically. I'm just going to say
about
around
15.
15.
Yeah.
And none of them have left since you sold the company.
That's right.
Which is insane. I think you had a staff of 7
that means you had a good work environment.
Right. Okay. So that's what I'm going to ask is like, what do you feel like? I know there's some things you wish you had done. So let's say if you can give me 1 or 2 things that you did great with employees, or not great, but you felt confident, and 1 or 2 that you had done better.
Okay. My biggest thing was to respect the employee. Okay. So a lot of people don't respect your employees. They may like you, but not necessarily respect you. So I respected them. So I respected the fact that it's 104 degrees out in the workshop. One of the things I decided to do was air condition my workshop. Okay? I respected the fact that we all get older. So I put in a 401k type profit sharing plan where we match money.
I love that.
Okay? I put in paid holidays. I put in paid vacations. When I first opened the automotive business, almost nobody had that.
Right.
You're back in those days, it was typical to get paid per job. That 5-hour job, you got paid 5 hours.
You're talking about your employee would get paid.
The employee would pay that, yeah.
Okay. Like commission, basically.
Almost like a commission. They call it flat rate.
Yes, sir.
But almost like commission. But later in life, I realized that did some detrimental things. One is you could always get the go-getter employee who would go get for 6 months, and man, he'd smack him in the face. It'd be great, and then he'd leave. Well, what's the point in that? You can't build on that, okay? And so,
love that.
Look for employees that were even not top producers, but steady. Almost like the tortoise and hare story.
I mean, people say that, right? They say, I don't know if you know this, Dad, but it's more expensive to lose people and retrain them than to keep people. I don't know if that makes sense. Like to have to keep cycling through people, it's more expensive.
And then, by the way, we were getting short on mechanics in the world. So,
another subject.
What I would do would be just respect them, give them a good work environment. I began to pay them hourly by the hour. In other words, you show up at 8 and you work till 5. You got paid from 8 to 5.
I'll say another thing is your hours were pretty good. Most mechanics usually would work really late trying to fix a car finish because they were turning hours, quote unquote. Like it felt like your guys came in at a decent time.
Well, that's another problem that structure of pay, that commission structure or flat rate structure it creates is there's no guarantee unless the car gets fixed that the mechanic's going to get paid. Mm-hmm. I took all that out. I took that on my own shoulders and gave an hourly rate.
Yeah.
And we would review this every year with a mechanic and say, last year you did very well, your production, because we did keep up with production.
Yeah, how many hours they turned,
Yeah. And then and the way we're going to reward you is we're going to give you this much more money per hour. But it was like paying it forward because I paid them and then I realized I was getting good work at it. Mm. And last thing was equipment.
Good equipment?
Have to have good equipment. Yeah. And that again, I was telling you before we started the show, that is one of the biggest mental things that changed. So a mechanic in 1975.
Gosh, 1975 is so, I just laugh at that because it's 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like, gosh, that's so crazy.
A mechanic in 1975 could go buy his toolkit.
Yeah.
And if he didn't lose anything, they were all warranted for life. Yeah. Doesn't matter what brand you buy. He could go buy his toolkit and he felt like he had something for the rest of his life. Mm. And then along about 1990, maybe as soon as 87, 88, we had to have electronic testing, computers, handheld units. They were good about 3 years, and then they were obsolete.
So much for life.
They were obsolete. So now the shop owner's looking at spending this large sum of money, and and he's got to change the way he thinks. That's not going to produce all its life.
Right.
It's going to produce about 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then the next one's likely to cost twice that much. And that's just a pattern we fell into.
I'm going through that same thing with trailers. It's like when you buy it, know it's going to have to replace X amount of time. And I've got a couple right now that are beat up that I haven't really thought about. Mm-hmm. So, all right, last part, Dad. We just could talk for hours, I know. What was the thing you wish you had done differently for the employees? For anyone listening, this is, you manage people for 40 years. What was the thing that they can learn from your, not mistake is the word, but things that you wish you had done differently as an owner and manager of people for 40 years?
Well, realize that your mother also worked there with me, and she was very good at what she did. Yeah. Which is the ability to write a service ticket, estimate a job, sell it. She was good at all of it. Mm-hmm. And then go in the office and do the bookwork. Mm-hmm. And so I wish that I had been insistent that she back out just a little bit more and we put a person in place to take something off her shoulders. Mm.
And not like a general manager or something?
Maybe like a GM, right?
Because you didn't have that.
We didn't.
And we didn't.
And we did that together.
Business.
We worked that as a team, me and her. And now we had a manager. We called him a manager. And he could run it 1 week or 2 weeks so we could go on vacation. But as far as a general manager, somebody who talked to your insurance company, somebody who worked with your bank, we didn't have that. We did that ourselves. And
I think that's a huge pain point for every business that goes from small business to like medium you're running it still as like a mom and pop when you're really an enterprise at that point.
And it's where you need to raise a manager, hire a manager.
Yeah.
And but you've already mentioned this. Managers are aging out.
They're aging out. They're not out there.
They're aging out. And so I was lucky enough to get the one I had when he was a young 23, 24, 25-year-old. He's still there today. He's 53 years old. Mm-hmm. And he knows the ins and outs. Now, he's not involved with the business side, but he can absolutely run the day-to-day.
I think you're right, though. Like, when I think of a good general manager, if the owner wasn't involved literally didn't answer a call for a month, it could still be fine.
Yeah, and that's tough to find.
Like a month, and that
is tough to find.
It is. It's really tough. Yeah, it's really tough. The people I talk to, the listeners on this show, whether it's plumbers, HVAC. I just had a car detailing guy start doing our fleet yesterday in my landscape business. He was telling me he's got a great, robust business. He's like, man, I don't know how to expand. I can't find like a foreman. I can't find a crew leader. He said he's booked out 6 days a week for weeks. It's just hard to find right now.
Well, in my retirement, I'm helping a body shop, kind of being their mechanic. Okay, you don't think a body shop needs a mechanic very much, but today the lines cross each other between mechanic and body so much.
Yeah.
And they're having the same problem. The body shop business cannot find senior body men. They can bring a greenhorn in, but a greenhorn gets to put together and take apart a lot of cars.
Yeah.
And then when he figures that out, he'll do something else.
Right.
But finding an experienced man, woman, anything where they can be put on a car, given the parts, and walked away from is very difficult.
It's hard. That's great insight. Well, Dad, this was awesome. We just talked for a long time. Thank you so much
for
giving your wisdom of business. And
I had one more thing.
Please do. Give us your final thought.
Final thoughts are when you're starting up, and I'm hoping that people are listening that are starting up, get a good accountant. Get a good accountant. I had somebody come to me in month number 2 and go, what you going to do for accounting? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Well, I think you ought to talk to this guy. And they put me on this guy. And this guy and I were about the same age.
Yeah.
And he was more than just an accountant. He was an educating accountant. He taught me how to plan equipment acquisitions, how I could afford them, when to depreciate something or when to pay for it out of cash flow. We were with that guy over 15 years.
Wow.
And a good friend of mine. And the only reason we ever left him was that period of learning was about over. And we were down to straight accounting.
Right.
And he had an employee leave that was my account manager.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we went.
Well, I'm gonna plug. I couldn't agree more. We use Cycle CPA for all of our stuff at Trifecta. They do a ton of stuff for landscaping and green industry companies. And they gave me a report the other day. It was the most amazing detailed report. I'm so serious. It was like me and Gabby, our business administrator, were like, "What is going on?" So I think a lot of people don't know what's going on with their books. I think it's
a must.
It's braille to them when they're like, I have no idea what this means. I'll pay it. And I couldn't agree more. You need to know where your numbers are in your business to know if your business is doing what it's supposed to do. And your accountant
also needs to, there's some things they know things you don't need to know.
Yeah.
Tax holes, the depreciation versus the cash flow, stuff like that. They know that.
Right.
And as long as you'll listen to them, and most of them don't tell you what to do, they'll explain the opportunities you have.
Yeah.
You take advantage of them.
Great. Well, thanks, Dad, for
your
thoughts today. Thank you guys for listening and watching the Down in Business podcast. Ben Kirby here, Alex Kirby here. We'll see you guys next time. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow wherever you're at, social media, YouTube. We want you to engage with us. Leave some comments below of any questions you have for Ben. I'll make sure he gets back to you. And we thank you. We'll see you next time.